Welcome, all you Melancholics. We're going to be talking about you in relationships today.
Some good stuff. Again, our temperaments always incline us to either see one another or not see one another. We're going to get into the specifics here for the Melancholics. We're talking about manuals here today. You got them. Trust me. We all got them. We'll see you in there.
Stick around. Hello.
Welcome back.
We're going to be talking about melancholics in relationships. Guys, this is what, number 3?
This is 3 of 4
of a
the series.
4-part series where we're talking about the temperaments in relationships, because that is where they all eventually lead.
Yeah.
Right?
Who cares about all this navel gazing of just knowing your own temperament? It's good. Self-awareness is good, but ultimately, falling back on that Catholic anthropology, right? Male and female, he created them. We are made for relationship, and we image God more perfectly in that relationship. And our temperaments have a way of inclining us to either be kind of constructive or destructive in how we approach relationships. So we're going to get into that today with Melancholic.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. Some of the qualities of the melancholic person that really come easily to them, and we could say are constructive, even virtuous in relationships, they're compassionate, very, very compassionate. These are the people who run the soup kitchens, who are always starting these new social justice type of entities.
Sure.
Who see a need and a poverty and just have such a bleeding heart to go and serve them. They're thoughtful. If you have a friend who always sends you cards out of nowhere, chances are they're a melancholic of some maybe predominant temperament or secondary, but they just think about other people and they follow through with sending it. I think like sanguines think about people. I'm a sanguine, but then never actually mail whatever it is that they're trying. Like I know I have like so much unmailed thoughtful things. They are empathetic. They're truthful. They are creative, very creative. I would say some of all of the artists out there probably were melancholic in some way, shape, or form. They're just these brilliant, creative geniuses. They're forthright. They are idealistic. Now, that can be a good and a bad thing, idealistic. But it's never a bad thing to have high ideals, right? It's kind of how we go about achieving them. They are tidy, so you want to be living with a melancholic because they are tidy. They are deep. They're great and strong conversationalists. Once you start to engage them, they think very deeply and thoughtfully on a lot of things. And they have high standards.
Yeah. Add to that list, they're very intellectual also. Intellectual, I think of even the domains and Clifton strengths. Oftentimes people that are high melancholic, I see a lot of green on the report. Green meaning their strategic thinking themes that are there, like intellection, right? Looking at things from multiple angles. The melancholic's brain is going.
Analytical.
Analytical, looking at data. That's another one that could show up there.
Strategic.
Strategic thinking. Yeah, but just kind of they need that space. They're often introverted. This is an introverted temperament. They need that space to just have that thinking time because their brain is constantly going and it needs to pause in taking input because it's always processing and on a very much a surface level. So, yeah.
Okay, so moving on. So there are some qualities that are destructive. Some of those, like we were saying, from even the constructive qualities, can
have a shadow side here.
Can have a shadow side, or can just be like a excess amount.
Yes, and I love even in everything that you said there, from compassionate to empathetic to truthful. Not truthful really, but everything can be excess or a deficit. With that too. I'd say even truthful can kind of be in an excess if it's truth without love. We're just like telling people what is. Right?
And then they go, but it's the truth.
It's just like, okay.
Like everyone's supposed to hear all of the truth all of the time.
So we got idealistic. Kind of as where that can, how can idealistic go vicious, I guess you could say.
Perfectionism, which actually ends up, it looks a lot like Pelagianism even, which is a heresy.
Tell me more.
Kind of Pelagianism is just, it's this, it's a heresy that is off of the premise that we can perfect ourselves.
Yes.
That we do not need God to perfect us. In fact, you see this a lot, even in the Catholic faith, where people like feel like they have to perfect themselves even to go to church. And the reason why it's a heresy is like, you cannot perfect yourself. Like
Yes.
it's impossibility. And so even just trying, so that's where those high ideals can go astray, and it leads to a heresy.
Yeah, I was thinking even, so it's, in a sense, it's like the person has everything they need without Christ, without grace, to be able to achieve their ultimate fulfillment. It's just not true. And that's the predominant flaw that we find in the secular coaching world, right? The person's whole, the person already has everything that they need. Now, in a certain sense, yes, if they have grace available to them, yeah, they got everything they need, right? Because God is there, right? But devoid of that or apart from that, it can go very bootstrapping very quickly. And even the other day, quick side story here. I was listening to our Alexa. I don't want to say it too loud because she'll start chirping at us. But she offered a mindset, a daily mindset app or something. I was like curious about it. Okay, so what is it? And so it offered these daily mindset things to say over and over again. The first one was about building self-reliance. And so my antenna went up there. I was like, uh-oh. Wonder what this is going to be. And it was, I trust my own wisdom. I trust my own wisdom. I trust, sounds very much like the guy who built all the barns in the Gospels after saying, what shall I do with all of this wealth here?
Yes, he consulted himself.
Consulted himself, right? And there it is, the self-referencing that tends towards individualism, which tends away from relationship, which tends towards despair.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to speak to this too, this reliance, because a lot of what we do too is helping people think for themselves. So where is that imbalance? It's when we go introvert, we isolate, we do not reach out to the source of wisdom
or even good
truth
counsel
and God or others, right? In good counsel. And so just remember, every virtue is in the middle of deficit and excess. So it's like right in the middle. And it's like, okay, there's a good balance of kind of like speaking to the Lord on your own in prayer and then reaching out to others. And then also taking action and acting upon that thing. So we don't want you guys to think reliance or self-reliance is altogether bad. It's ungodly self-reliance when we leave God out.
Yep.
Make
Good.
sense?
Yes.
Okay. Another thing, the qualities that are deconstructive are they hurt easily. Now, this is because they have really deep, they're just very deep, and they have a lot of compassion and empathy, and they hurt easily. And because they hurt easily, there might be a lot of unforgiveness there, which kind of blocks them from any new relationships or blocks them from opening up and being vulnerable.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful thing about being hurt easily. I mean, even vulnerability, the definition is to be left open to attack. So, and we know vulnerability is a necessary component for relationship, right? To be seen naked and naked without shame, as John Paul II would describe it, or Scripture would describe it. So when we say they're hurt easily, I think what we find, the way that the melancholic will hurt themselves easily is by ruminating on some destructive thoughts or presuming bad intentions or malicious intentions from people, what they, you can read into what people say. And so think about, again, the reaction times, what distinguishes the temperaments from one or the other. Melancholics are slow to react, but it's a long duration that's there. Why is that there that long duration? Because they continue to think back to that experience, which extends the lifetime of that experience. They continue to experience, and it can evolve based on how they are thinking about that experience. And oftentimes it can go away of
Negative.
hurt. Yeah.
And negativity, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And forgiveness, it always blocks us. It blocks us from growth. It blocks us from inner healing.
Yeah. I deal with this a lot.
And it also blocks us from, relationships. So
Yeah.
Another one, judgmental. Because they have high ideals, and a lot of their high ideals, actually I would say all of them, are directed towards themselves first. They also may have a tendency for that to spill over into others. Like, well, why don't they? They should just do this, or they should, and it shows up in that way. Which brings us to our final one, manuals.
We're going to sit here for a little bit.
You guys don't really know well, maybe you do know what manuals are, but manuals are ways of judging others. Basically, they're the unspoken expectations. We have an entire course on this. It's called Marriage Manuals in our academy. A fantastic course. I think everyone needs to learn this. How to stop having these high and unspoken expectations for others that you are not sharing with the others.
That's the funny part.
Yes.
That you are not sharing with the others. So we have this standard to which we're holding somebody up to, but they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And then when they don't meet it, we get mad.
I would say cholerics also have manuals, but they have expectations that they say out loud to others a lot of times, which get them into trouble too. But okay, so why, Matt? Why are manuals? Why would this be a deconstructive quality, like this tendency to have these high expectations?
Sure.
Remember, the melancholic has these high expectations for themselves too. So it's kind of a double whammy, and then they expect others to be in this ideal place as well.
Sure. Well, Aaron, I think even in our own relationship, and I remember even having this, giving a talk at the Theology of the Body Institute conference, their online conference they did a few years ago, and it was even around like our expectations for romance, or for how much you should be talking to me and asking me about my interior life. Like that's something.
Yeah.
And it was this expectation that I had, like, Aaron should be really wanting to know everything there was about my day. And she really should want to be kind of concerned with what's going on in my interior life and not challenge it, but actually just like accept it and enjoy it too. And really have this desire to do this, and this desire to see me like this way that I want to be seen. And you know what? She should know already how I want to be seen.
Yes.
And what my preferences are for that.
She should be a mind reader.
I shouldn't have to tell her. And in fact, if I do tell her, that means it's less authentic when it shows up. And so I'm just going to wait here and drop really subtle hints that come out in the form of passive aggressiveness, or just straight up aggressiveness at some point, or subtle manipulation and not so subtle manipulation, silent treatment,
rumination,
snide comments here that perhaps will like start to guide her towards where I want her to be and loving me the way I think I need to be loved in that moment. Is that a good idea? Good description?
Yeah. I mean, and so you can see where that leads. But I mean, the problem with when you have high expectations for people that are maybe sometimes realistic, sometimes unrealistic, and you don't say it to the person, well, why? You're not even giving them a chance to actually fulfill this request of yours if you don't tell them.
Yeah.
But the second thing is you are having a relationship with somebody who doesn't exist.
Tell me more.
So when you're like, you should be this way, what you're doing is you're actually creating this ideal of this person that you've married, and not looking at seeing the person that you did marry. Flaws and all, which, by the way, you have them too, melancholics out there, right? So like they're doing probably the same thing to you. No, you have them.
Well, that's debatable.
So that is kind of, you're having a relationship with with a fake person, pretty much.
I can see that, how literally by having these manuals and these expectations of what you believe this person should be, you're failing to really celebrate where the person is right now, or not even celebrate. All right. That's not even the right word. To love the person where they are right now. Because we don't want to necessarily, if somebody's in a place where they're living in real vice or sin, we don't want to celebrate that, but we do want to love them there.
Yeah.
We do want to let them know that, like, okay, my love is not conditional. This needs to be fixed in order for me to abide with you and be with you where you are right now. But that's kind of when you have that manual, your love does become conditional at that point. Because what you're tacitly saying is, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be over here. And until you get over here, I am not going to, I'm going to really be resentful that you're here.
Yeah. And of course that's deconstructing to a relationship.
It sucks.
You're not even like in a relationship with the person that you're in a relationship with. You're in a relationship with somebody else, and then you're angry that they are the person that you are actually in a relationship with.
And the other person doesn't even know that you're angry with them.
So
there were times where I would be laying in bed just stewing, saying like, oh gosh, you didn't do this. And you'd just be snoring away, having no idea. And here I am just punching myself in the face before I go to sleep. And then I wake up cranky in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't do it as much anymore.
Yes.
Really. Actually, I can't even remember the last time that happened.
Well, awesome. So that
I just tell you when you piss me off now.
That brings me to the next point here. So manuals, I know we're putting it in this category, but they're really just thoughts. They're thoughts that say you should be blank. And they're operating under the premise of these thoughts. This is the ideal, the right, or the only way. They should be doing this. I should be doing this differently. They should be doing this differently. Like, it's just any shoulds and having these expectations. So they're thoughts. And here's what I want to tell you guys all. Thoughts are optional. You do not have to keep manuals.
Haven't heard that one before.
You can drop them. And Matt just said, like, he hasn't experienced this in a while, which is only like, I think a lot of people think manuals are useful and protective. And I think they do in a certain way protect you from feeling disappointed. But you also, if you've been listening to us for a while, and you can go back to a couple of our podcasts talking about processing emotion, like, you know how to process disappointment. That is not that person's job to fix disappointment for you. That is your emotion. You need to take ownership of that. It doesn't mean it doesn't suck. It doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable a little bit.
Yeah, with the manuals, though, you really fail to see the other person. And again, we go back to this. Like, what does it take to enter into a relationship? Seeing the other person allowing themselves to be seen, you even seeing yourself, right? And so what helped was when I started to allow myself to be seen by myself, okay, why do I desire to be, what is the desire that I want from Erin? How do I desire to be loved? Why do I desire to be loved that way? What do I think that means when she loves me this way? Is that true? And the more kind of like I started to do some of the work on that, but first allowing myself to be seen without judgment, right? Because there were times where I wouldn't even allow myself to look at this because I would feel so ashamed that I would have this. And shame just has a way of, you will always hide. The outcome of shaming is always hiding, right? And so when you're hiding, you're not being seen. Adam, where are you, right? So, but it was first allowing myself to be seen, my desire to be seen, but then also there was a place of humility where it's like, do I even know how I did, definitively how I desire, like what it means to be loved, right?
Yeah.
Because my expectation was being loved this way, her really indulging in my interior life, like sitting on the couch and just her, looking at me. That was my thoughts on how that was going to be the most loving experience that I could have. And I still enjoy that, you guys, like when those moments happen. But also, like, I'm not thinking about her at all with that. Like, it's very self-focused. It's very about me, how I desire to be loved. And it's, again, don't take this as like, just be dismissive of the way that you desire to be loved.
Yeah.
But I was able to at least start coming to Erin and be like, Erin, I just want you to know that when you ask me about my day, it really means something to me.
There's a request. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really meaningful for me. Or Erin, when you just like touch me throughout the day, like is even like right here, the back of my neck, just like when we're driving, like it's just, when you touch me, it's just, I really enjoy it. It means a whole lot to me when you do that.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because having manuals, when we're talking about manuals, these expectations, that doesn't invalidate your desire to actually request like these ways of affection, right? So it's like, yeah, like exactly what you did. But the problem is when they are unspoken and then they become resentful and then you just assume that the person like isn't loving you well, and like got to give the person like an opportunity to love you well and like and let them not be a mind reader for once. I think of a story. Do you mind if I share this?
I have no idea what you're about to share, so
one
sure.
of your manuals came out, and I just want to kind of from being
Feeling
on
a little vulnerable right now.
from being on the receptive end of this, like how this could lead to disconnection. You had just gotten back from being overseas, Okinawa, and I'll own what I did too. I probably drank too much that night, and I was like smoking cigarettes like a sailor, and like just
this is after we were married.
No. This is when we were still dating.
Oh, okay.
This was like our first fight, and I remember this actually because I never like really fought with him before. And you were, I don't know if what was going on in your head, but you had an expectation of how I needed to be acting that night, which I will take all of the credit and the blame of how I was
not
acting
like
that
an
night.
Animal,
Right?
Perhaps.
like I was a part of Animal House.
Oh my gosh,
But,
like Belushi.
But I mean, it wasn't like doing like lines of coke or something. Like I was just, having fun with my friends. Anyway, so Matt was like, had this ideal in mind. And I remember you going outside and just like being upset. And
I got to get away.
But here's the funny thing. Like we had
passive-aggressive.
met. I wasn't like not acting that way when we met. Like this wasn't something new. So I came out, I was like, hey, what's wrong? Of course, I had no idea, very aloof. And
Wait for it.
there was like something like, I don't know, it was something, there was a comment that was kind of like, I wasn't expecting you to like act this way. Or I don't know what it was.
I don't remember any of this.
I do, because I was like, well, I guess you need to be dating somebody else. Because that
This
is exactly
me,
how I've always been acting.
whoa.
This isn't anything new. And I was like, I felt like it was like there was this ideal version of me that I just wasn't ever. And I didn't know where that ideal person came from. And then there was like the real me. And so that was a perfect example of experiencing a manual. I mean, we obviously, he didn't remember it. So we obviously got over it very quickly. I said, I'm so sorry. And
you no longer smoke and you no longer drink excessively.
Right. So there you go. But I was like, I'm so sorry you're dating the wrong person. Like, did we not?
And like the prideful side of me is like, my manual works. No, like it's
Never.
I remember even going
guys.
back to the smoking thing, because it was just like, that was a request where it was just like, I did not smoke. And when I do smoke, I look like a 16-year-old girl with a cigarette. Like, just like it's not a, I don't look
So are you
cool.
saying you don't smoke purely for vanity reasons?
No, I do smoke because when I do smoke, it's just like, I think it's like I'm going to be able to connect with this other person that's out here having a cigarette. So it's like the motivation is connection, but like as soon as I inhale, I go, it's a mistake.
Yeah, it's
a mistake.
terrible idea.
My little pink lungs
Yes.
are dry heaving after 2 puffs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, even when we were approaching smoking, so I knew you wanted to stop smoking.
Yeah.
And I continue to get the life insurance bills every month and be like, please stop smoking. But there was a shift. Like the manipulation tactics, the shaming tactics that I thought were going to be effective were not effective.
Yeah.
They were the opposite of being effective.
Ineffective.
Very ineffective. Like, yeah, but like not just ineffective, but like pushing you toward to be like, you can't tell me what to do kind of thing.
Right.
And so again, like manuals have this way of imposing on somebody else's freedom, which is never loving. They put a demand. It's just never loving.
Yeah.
And
that's not
like,
how God works with us.
Yeah, no.
Like,
Thank
can you
God.
imagine?
Thank God that God don't.
I mean, I kind
thank
of
you.
wish sometimes he does when it's like our greatest good, but like, if I'm going to be honest, but
you don't.
He also knows he's given us an intellect and a will so we could freely love him and freely choose him.
Right. Never imposing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
Where are we
what
at?
to do? How do we like find out if we have manuals? And we're not saying that all melancholics, it's just melancholics who have manuals. By no means. All
But they tend in
of
their
the temperaments have them.
Yes, but they tend to be thinking a lot. They tend towards perfection. They tend towards having an ideal, and
Yes,
they
so
tend
there's a
towards not
tendency.
speaking, right? Being quiet about it. So
So it's all the
we see it.
tendencies
Yes.
that lead to manuals.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we do. You want to pick a person in your life who, we're going to be like no editing right now, who lets you down a lot or who disappoints you a lot. Could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a friend, whatever.
Parent.
You
Yep.
could even just think of the
Coworker.
the recent example. Like, okay, what is that? And then how did they behave and why was their behavior a problem to you? Don't just assume their behavior is a problem factually speaking, but why was it a problem for you or to you?
Mm-hmm.
Did I say it for you?
Yeah.
Is that the right way of saying it? Yes.
Yeah. Like, why do you think it was a problem?
Yes.
You. Not like in general, but I think own the problem.
Yes.
Own the perception of the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Then what you want to say, what you want to ask yourself is, how should they have behaved? These are your manuals.
Mm-hmm.
So they should have said this. They should have done this. Boom, 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 boom. Whatever it is, write them all down and then identify. And by the way, all of those manuals are not facts. They are not something that everybody would agree on.
Mm-hmm.
They also are thoughts, which means they are optional, which means we can work on them,
Mm-hmm.
which is great because you can drop them. And guys, dropping your manual is not just good for your relationship, it's good for you. Like Matt was just saying, he's like, he used to lay there and ruminate and I'd be like sound asleep. It wasn't affecting me. Like he was creating more of a problem in his own head and distress in his own head than anything. So if maybe that's the reason that you start with dropping these manuals, please just consider it.
Yes. And I think it's also, I always like making the distinction here that when we're talking about manuals, we're talking about preferences.
Yes.
We're not talking about moral shoulds. Mm-hmm. Okay. But even when we are talking about moral shoulds, for example, my spouse should be faithful to me, mm-hmm. right? We still, even when they are unfaithful, we still get to choose how we are going to show up.
And think about it.
How we are going to
them.
think about
Yes.
it, right? Now, it doesn't mean that we have to drop that manual that my wife should be, or my spouse should be faithful to me.
No.
Don't drop that one,
Yes.
actually. That is a good should. That is like the marriage ceases to be a marriage, arguably, when somebody, or you, that is something that is objectively harmful to the marriage.
Yes, and to your wedding
to the
vows.
nature of a
Yeah.
marriage, what it is, undermines it. It will always be destructive. So yes, that's a good should. But also, like, even when you have those good shoulds, or you can always hold on to your manuals if you want, even your preferences. You don't have to let them go. Free will, right? But we always get to choose how we respond, right? And
Yes.
we desire as Christians to be loving in our response.
Yes, yes. And make sure it's like a free will choice too, like how you are responding. If you're not acting in freedom, that should give you some indication that, okay, maybe I'm bound to this. Maybe this isn't ideal. Maybe this is like protective for me emotionally in some way, shape, or form. Is there ownership that I need to take there? So the next question, and this is actually very appropriate, is how is this manual useful or protective for me? That's going to give you a lot of information. Most manuals are. The reason why we have a hard time dropping them is because we think they're useful and protective. We think if we don't have manuals, this person's just going to be a wild person, right? I don't know. Like they think
Jesus is going to smoke and drink and go to bars nonstop.
and guess what? I did anyway, whether or not he had the manuals.
We've come a long way. We have
Yes.
come a long way.
It didn't change, but it didn't change me anyway. But
Because I certainly was not doing that stuff.
how is this manual useful or
Not.
protective? You're probably protecting against some kind of emotion. And good news, we have work. We can help you with that, with how to work through your own emotions and take ownership of them. Does this manual actually create connection or disconnection with this particular person? That's another thing. Guys, ultimately, the goal of all of this that we're talking about is to create connection. When there is disconnection, let that be a sign for you in some way, shape, or form. But like, how do you know this leads to disconnection? When you actually take that manual, which is a thought, ask yourself, how is this manual making me feel? How is this manual making me feel? Somebody just gave me an example of this. They have a client who's saying, I married this man. I'm thinking he should have been, or he should be, the spiritual lead of the family. Right? I don't disagree with that. I think that's a great thing for a man to be a spiritual lead of the family. But if we were to ask her, how does that thought make you feel? Probably disappointed. And then where does that disappointment, what does that cause you to do? How does that cause you to act and show up in the relationship? Well, it's probably a lot of passive aggression.
Nagging.
There's probably nagging. There's probably kind of subtle manipulation tactics. There's
ultimatums.
Ruminating on, did I make the right decision 10 years ago when I married this person?
Judgment, condemnation.
I mean, okay, so like find out where this manual leads you, and then actually redecide, do I want to keep this manual? Like Matt was saying, you guys could totally keep them. We're not forcing you to get rid of them, but like find out where it leads.
Yeah, I like also like is always going back to the seeing the other person. Is this manual allowing me to see the other person? And we say see the other person, it's just like, I love how John Paul II says that like whenever we're dealing with other people, we have to, in Love and Responsibility, I just read this at a seminar that I just gave, but whenever we're dealing with other people, we have to see like, and we're acting on other people. We understand that these person are not objects, a means to an end. They're not instruments to achieving some sort of end, but rather that they have or should have, he says, their own personal ends. They have their own motivations. And I think seeing the person, a big part of seeing the person is understanding what is driving them to do what they're doing. What is driving them to not conform with your manual?
So
right
this
now?
is so perfect because that's the final question here. So once you've kind of gone through, you find out where the manual leads you, and maybe I don't want to keep this manual. A perfect shift specifically for a melancholic who has such a natural inclination towards compassion and empathy. Go in and just get curious about the other person. Why do you think that they're continuing to do this? This behavior that I have that is not lining up with my manual? Or why are they avoiding my manual? Like what's going on in their mind? And get really curious about, from a place of compassion, not judgment, get curious about what they might be thinking. And just be like, you know what, I think I could try to believe this. This will stretch your brain a little bit because it's going to be very different from the way that you think. But knowing that you love this person and that you're willing, guys, this is entering into the act of willing love, which is how love is not a feeling. It's an act of the will. This is a perfect example of how to do that. It stretches you.
And here's it's an act of the will. It's willing the good of the other. And in order, like what is the foundation of a loving relationship is willing the common good together. It's when you both, like we just talked about before, every person has their own distinct motivations. They have their own desired ends. John Paul II talks about in his Love and Responsibility. And so when we can identify what that is, and we can both decide for ourselves, we both desire this common good. Now that's the foundation for a loving relationship, because willing the good of the other is now willing a common good. So you're willing a good that both you desire and the other person desires. But our manuals, what they do is they trap us in our own desire, never seeing or never discovering what the other person desires. Or it presumes that what we desire is the best desire.
So that's another great question. Then add this to your list of questions. What is the greatest good?
Yeah, common good. Greatest common good, I would say, between me and this person.
Like if I were to kind of set aside my ideal, what is the greatest common good for everybody involved here? All right, great. Okay, moving on. How do we motivate and love our melancholic loved ones?
Yeah. And know this, pursuing the common good will often make your personal good be subordinated, right? So personal good, subordinate to common good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Loving our melancholics, motivating.
Yes.
Motivating the melancholic loved one. Thanks. Blah, 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 blah.
All right. So if you have a spouse or child who's melancholic, you want to give them space to process, space and time and quiet to process things. They will be the people who will be in conversation. They'll be listening intently, but it will take them maybe a while to like get back to you if you ask them a question or whatever. So if you are fast moving, one of the temperaments like a choleric or sanguine, this might be frustrating to you because you're like, well, okay.
Give me an answer now.
Yeah.
Tell me now.
And I know
like,
you're brilliant. So like, just give me what your thoughts are. But like, it takes them a while to process.
Yeah.
And
I
so
literally coached somebody on this the other day. It's just like, it's melancholic and it was like, just know that one of the things you need is you need time to process. You are not going to know what to say in the moment. And then if you don't take time to process and really come up with a reasoned response, you may end up saying yes when you don't to a demand or a request when you don't really want to say yes to that, just because like you feel like you have to make it in that moment. It's just like, no, being kind to yourself as a melancholic and also being kind to the melancholic is recognizing that they need some time to process and think through things, and then create the space for them to be able to do so they can show up and meet your request with an honest answer.
Yes. Another thing is, do not take their negativity or looking at what could be wrong in this situation personally. It's kind of how their brain works. It looks for the landmines. It looks for, okay, what needs to be fixed. It looks a little bit to the negative side, but don't take it personally. So like, that's kind of another thing for you guys to know. Encourage them to journal and get their thoughts down on paper.
Yes.
To put separation between themselves and their thoughts.
Because they got lots of them.
They have a lot of thoughts and they have a lot of very deep emotions. And to like that would be a very helpful thing for a melancholic to get their thoughts out on paper and their emotions out on paper. Affirm and appreciate them as a person. That's kind of just like, duh, we all have to do that. But like, I really affirm them, and not necessarily like for their ideas or for their like their deep compassion. Like, affirm them as the person, because like one of the things that I think a lot of melancholics struggle with is fear of rejection. And so I think even just affirming them as a person in their weaknesses and all. Help them to see the purpose and understand the meaning of things. So if you have a child who's a melancholic, like just kind of get down and help them to understand why you're asking them to do something.
Because they seek to rest in understanding.
Yes.
Right? That's why they're thinking so much, because they want to understand.
Encourage them to look at the facts of situations. So they may have the tendency to look for the negative, like I was saying before. But if you were to say, okay, so tell me all the facts of it, all from both sides of this circumstance that you're giving to me, you can start to help them dig up maybe some of the positive aspects of it too. But they also really, I think, appreciate the analytical side and like kind of like the being factual about things. I remember coaching somebody, it was a friend of mine, but it was just kind of like over like a voice memo. And they were like, pray for me. I think my husband's losing their job. And she was like flipping out. She was just like went to that space. And I was like, okay, tell me what the facts are. It was like, they received this letter and I'm like, so in the letter, did it say you might be losing your job? Like, does it actually say that? And they were like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, so why do we think that this is the case? And it just minimized this escalation of kind of ruminating, going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, the other piece too that I think can be very helpful, and you've kind of touched on it already, but like, so melancholics are typically internal processors. but it doesn't mean that they don't desire to externally process as well. But they may be reluctant to because they have judgments on what this processing externally will look like. And they'll say things like, here I go rambling again. Okay, let them ramble.
Yeah.
Like this is perhaps even create space for your melancholic loved one to ramble and not come to a place of conclusion when they're done, but just like treat it as an opportunity, a window into their interior life. And you can just kind of like be there with them while they're looking at all these, all the thoughts are going past their head. Yeah.
A neutral observer and just be like, no need.
Hold the
no need
space.
to
No
apologize.
judgment.
Just keep going. Keep going. I'm here. Yeah. I think that's helpful too. Try not to meet their negativity with your negativity. It's like, I'm just so annoyed that you are being like so negative. Like, but also don't try to cheer them up. This drives me crazy.
Stop cheering me up.
Yes. You want to stay as neutral as possible. Like I said, you could ask this question like, what are the facts? But also like, what else could be true here? What else is true here? And some of those neutralizing questions, but also giving them that space. You do not want to, I mean, we teach our coaches this. Like this is, I think, lesson number 1, how to hold neutral space.
Yes. It's one thing if they're showing up to a coaching relationship where the expectation is the person is going to coach them. If this is not a coaching relationship, do not start to coach them through this without their permission.
But
then
you
need to set an expectation or invite them, say like, I can listen this way or this way. What are you looking for right now?
Yes.
And then you can also put limits to how long you're willing to listen.
I love that. Like, okay, so, and also know that they may not want a solution. So you could be like, okay, so I have like thoughts on like solutions for this, but do you just want me to listen? Because I'm happy to do that too. So exactly what Matt's saying, like, what is your expectation of this from me? I'm happy to be here to support and listen. Totally fine. If that's just, you just want an ear to listen, that's fine.
For another 5 minutes.
I can totally understand where you might be coming from here, but I also have some solutions too. So if you would like that as well. However, that's a really good point. Never coach anybody who's not asking to be coached. And that doesn't mean you can't neutrally listen and hold space for somebody.
Yeah.
That's kind of the
Define
distinction
the
I wanna make.
relationship.
Yes.
DTR.
Help them neutralize their language, their extreme language. Melancholics can use language like never, always, everyone, nobody. So you can actually, by asking them what the facts are and understanding, okay, is it always that way, or is it like sometimes, or was it
really
that way
that
that 1 or 2 times? Right. And so even just helping neutralize the language, I think, is really helpful. Give them permission to be in a negative mood. Just kind of like, don't like let it affect you, while reminding them that their mood is their choice. And I don't know what this looks like.
You do that.
But here's what you can do. Okay, I'm sorry.
You're choosing to stay so sad and cranky.
Says the
right
guy
now.
who
It's
always
like,
goes, that's a thought, in a very passive aggressive way. Says that man.
I did not ask to be coached right now.
So what would be a loving way for me to be like, hey, I know you have like this incredibly intellectual mind, and like you being in this negative mood is completely your choice, and you get to choose an expiration date for this.
I think that's, I like that.
All right, cool.
I think it's just like,
Try that.
It's just like, or it's just like, hey, you can stay here as long as you like.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. It's just like, got it. And you can also be like, you know, if they're like, well, I want you to stay with me. It's just like, no, I don't want to. I'm not going to stay with you. And it's
I
like,
don't
you
prefer.
You can stay here as long as you like, but I'm just choosing not to. Doesn't mean I don't love you, but I'm just like, right now I'm going to
I've
go.
got other things to do.
Like, maybe this is some great time for you to connect with Jesus.
I usually
and for
go.
me to go pray for more charity, because I am not feeling very Christ-like in this moment.
I usually go, I have to go to the bathroom, and then I never come back. That was always my way out of uncomfortable situations when I would go out with my girlfriends.
Gotta
Be
go.
like, gotta go to the bathroom. Nobody can like really fight that off, right? Like even if you just go to the bathroom and like blow your nose or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So give them, get them outside of their mind. Like we were saying, like they are very intellectual, analytical. They will get inside their mind, and then it could ruminate. They could go down this rumination path. Get them outside of their mind and using their empathy to serve others. I love this. This is just like, it's not like a mindset trick. It's just being like, hey, like, I know you have like a huge heart and you love helping others. Like, who can we help today? What is the poverty that you want to like help today?
Yes. Getting them out of their own mind is such a helpful thing. Stop anything to get them to stop thinking about themselves or get out of their own world.
Yes.
And like snap back to reality.
They're also highly creative.
I'd say us, getting us to think, here I am.
Yeah. I think also just kind of compelling them to use their creativity to create something brand new, something that's never existed before. So that's a way of getting themselves out of their mind too, and using one of their gifts. Expect the fear of failure to come up. So like when you're helping somebody kind of move towards a goal, a melancholic towards a goal, that fear of failure will come up, and it will, like, they will be, I want to say debilitated by it, but it will be like, ugh. So one of the things is you could talk about it before it comes up. You could actually like help them expect it. Like, this is fine. This is actually part of the process. Like you having this fear of failure or this thought, I might fail. This might not be perfect the first time. This will probably come up. How do we want to deal with it when it comes up? I always like to say, like, appeal to their desire for work. Like, I can always tell my melancholic coaches that I help with this. It's like, imagine all the people who could be helped by you.
Imagine all the people.
No.
Yes.
Song is,
a very melancholic song.
Just imagine all the people who could be helped by you as a coach, but they're not because of this tiny little fear that is actually part of the process. Encourage them to try B- work. I love B- work. It's like, get the work out there and you don't ever have to look at it again. But it's not A++ work. The reason why we say B- work, that's good enough to get out there. So much of our work is B- work.
Yeah. Don't let the great be the enemy of the perfect, or perfect be the enemy of the, what? How's it go? Don't let the great be the enemy of the good.
I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah. So basically, like, instead of getting into that analytical, like, no action phase, just create something, put it out there. I promise you your B- work may just change people's lives. If you guys listen to our podcast, this is clear. This is B- work, our podcast. We're not saying that to be mean.
Ouch.
Well, I could say that because I'm the creator. Like, I write a lot of these podcasts.
I think you're doing a great job here, babe. I think don't sell yourself short.
Okay, says the melancholic. Here's what I'm saying:
it's the best podcast.
If you love our podcast, just to let you know,
write us a review.
I'm not sitting here being like making sure it's A++ work. I know that it needs to be out there and in your ears to actually create impact.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying here.
Got it.
All right. I'm not saying I am negligent with this. I'm not saying that I am trying to do B-
I think we've come a long
work.
way from episode 1.
I would say,
true episode
okay,
1
here's the interesting
that didn't
thing.
even actually make it.
Here's the interesting
We have a
thing.
hidden episode, folks. Maybe one day we'll put it out there.
I think
cringe when I listen to it.
Can I talk? Oh my gosh.
Go ahead. Color commentary.
Are you done?
Done. All done. Go ahead.
I think that is a perfect example of A++ work, and I didn't like it. I was highly trying to be like putting so much effort into it, and it was so awkward and weird that I would say I prefer B- work, and I'm sure you guys do too.
Yeah,
we will never share that podcast with you. I'm just kidding. Okay, number 3, say every amazing work or task started somewhere. That helps the melancholic start to get into actions. Like, hey, whatever. I know you love ideals. I know you love perfection. But guess what? Every amazing, every perfect, every ideal work had to start somewhere. I love this saying, and this might not appeal to the melancholics, but it certainly appeals to me. In order to succeed in something, you have to be willing to suck at it.
Yeah. And I think it's important. Like the melancholics, while we like to be in our heads, really the desire is to have whatever's in our heads, like the good stuff, the good ideas, out there.
Yeah.
And
because otherwise, what's the point of it?
Well, yeah, the mind's exactly like it's a desire to be gift. And so this is where I think back to now, like strengths, Clifton strengths. Like this is where, say, if you're, Aaron's the activator really in the family here. Aaron's the person that really can like, let's go, let's get it done. There can be, you can really show up as a gift to that other person and help them to take what's in their head and like make it visible, help them become a gift.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's funny because a lot of my clients are melancholics, and I think to myself, I don't know why you guys like me as your coach, because I'm like so opposite of that. I'm like so sanguine, and I'm like, doesn't this drive you crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Like
move them out of their head. They don't want to be in there.
But I think that's why. I
It's
think because I help activate them, and I just hold the space for them. I let them be imperfect human beings, which is like so beautiful.
Yeah, it could be the case.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we got for you today. Next episode is going to be the phlegmatics. We always leave you guys for the end because we know that you care the least about being left at the end.
Leave the best for last.
Oh yeah, Erin says that now because she took her test and found out that she's secondary phlegmatic, very close to her choleric.
Yes.
But I can see it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So
Good.
we will be back, guys.
And if you want to get more
around.
of this, it's in the Academy. Look in the Academy. We got the full report. Take the temperaments test that we have.
It's free.
It's free. If you want to buy up to the dominant report, you can get your dominant strengths in there. Or if you want to take the test for free, just get those results and then join the Academy. You'll see the full report for all 4 temperaments that's there because we want you guys to learn about one another's temperaments too.
Yeah, and we're talking about this month, if you're actually listening to this in real time, we are talking about temperaments in relationships and coaching people on it. So needed. So needed.
Makes a difference.
Check it out. We'll see you guys around. Bye.
Take care.